We've got a 3-game Thanksgiving slate. We've got a big Millie Maker up top, $20 entry. This should be a fun one. This has got to be one of my favorite slates across all sports, man. What about you?
Yeah, dude, I enjoy it. Got some pretty interesting division rivalries or just Thanksgiving rivalries, but, at least the Lions are good this year, right?
I was just going to say the same thing, man. I was petitioning for so long to just be like, dude, get these guys off the damn TV on Thanksgivings, man. But finally it's paid off. They're the best they've been since, 1962? Let's get into it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, 3-gamer. This is going to be interesting, man. I know we usually do most of our content on showdown slates, but a matchup like this or a 3-game slate like this, you can kind of take some of your showdown strategy and kind of incorporate it here. We're going to have to worry about ownership. Everybody's going to be playing Dak and Cowboy stacks. Everybody's going to be dabbling in that the run game for Detroit. So we're going to have to find ways to get different. I don't think you need to avoid those guys at all. Just maybe just a little bit different roster construction and just putting some thought into it. When it comes to a slate like this and on a holiday like this, we're going to see like a lot of casuals just building lineups on their phone like right before lock, sort of a thing. So I think the competition allows us, if we can just get a little bit smarter with the way we're building, we can find some leverage. I don't think you need to avoid the chalk plays necessarily. We'll get into some of that here in a minute. But let's just talk about overall. Let me switch over here. Let me switch to my bird's eye view of the slate. So first matchup, Packers going into Detroit. Thank God Detroit's good. Probably one of the best teams in the NFC at this point. One of the best teams in the league, arguably. Green Bay Packers struggling lately. This is a 47.5 point total. I know Green Bay won last week, but their run defense is absolute garbage. And it's a 7.5 point spread. This one seems to be like a juicy one. It's the first game of the slate, so do you want to blow everything right off the bat with like massive game stacks? Maybe. I think that's a good strategy for a 3-gamer is to go heavy game stack type builds. If you can get to 60, 80, 100 lineups, that's a strategy. Thoughts on this matchup overall? We're in the dome. We don't have to worry about a lot of weather on this slate, which is nice. But we're going to have to target these running backs for Detroit. I mean, big time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what was it? 2 weeks ago, I think it was Jahmyr Gibbs who got a couple goal line touches for touchdowns. And what was it? David Montgomery with the 65, 75-yard touchdown run. So now that we know that they can flip the roles, like it's going to be really hard getting off of both of them. You know what I mean? But this, I don't know, like this sounds crazy, but this might be the game I'm most excited to watch. I just enjoy the Detroit Lions. Like, I don't know, man. Like I've always liked the Lions. It's cool to see them being good. It's weird that it's without Stafford, but this will be a fun one. There's going to be a lot of offense in that game for sure.
And we had a Barry Sanders documentary come out last night. I need to watch that. I definitely need to watch it before this game. We remember earlier in the year, it was a Thursday night game where David Montgomery absolutely crushed. And what did he get? 3 touchdowns in that one? That was before we saw Jahmyr Gibbs really establish like a bigger role. But I still think a guy like Montgomery in this game being like 20 to 30% lower owned than Gibbs could be a nice pivot. And shit, getting both of these running backs in the same lineup, I don't hate that either. Let's move on to the other game here. And so the way this show will be structured, just so you guys know, we'll go through briefly kind of each matchup, talk a little bit about the matchups. We'll talk more about injuries, and then we'll get into a breakdown where we go position by position. Before I move on, actually, we need to mention Green Bay is so beat up injury-wise. This is probably where we're going to find a lot of value. As of now, the injury report is so huge. We'll get into that in the injuries. They almost need their own segment. All right, let's look at this Washington Commanders' pathetic pass defense going into Dallas. We don't have to worry about weather, thankfully. This is an 11-point spread, 49 total. So there's going to be some points put up here, but probably just by Dallas, in my opinion. Like Washington maybe can come out and score a little bit, but this Dallas defense is incredible. Deron Bland crushing, what does he have, 4 touchdowns this year, which is more than the entire New York Jets receiving core all season. This feels like a 5, 6, 7 sack game for Dallas. To me, this feels like a 14, 17 points by Washington. A lot of people are going to be on this game, like a lot, as they should be. I don't think you should avoid it, and I don't think you should avoid Dak just because he's going to be high owned. In fact, I probably will be double the field, even if he comes in at 40%. I'm going to have a ton of Dak stacks. But what worries me in this matchup, Ellie, is optimizers or SaberSim or whatever you're using is probably going to try to jam a run back into this game. Like a McLaurin, any of these wide receivers, Dotson, Samuel, even Brian Robinson, maybe, Logan Thomas. I just don't know that you have to do that in this game. Maybe you just focus on getting a ton of Dallas and, get CeeDee Lamb in there, but maybe get a guy, maybe get a lower owned guy in that stack. And then don't run anything back. Don't waste a roster spot on maybe a guy like Terry McLaurin who can get you 5 fantasy points. What's your strategy when it comes to this game? Because this game is one we really want to target, but I don't necessarily think you have to throw a run back into these Dallas stacks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. Like I think if you're going to run this game back, you got to do it the other way. I think you stack up Sam Howell in the Washington Commanders and you run it back with somebody from the Dallas side. I think if you're going to try and go the blowout route where Dallas just beats the shit out of Washington, just like you and everyone else on the planet is expecting, then yeah, you probably don't necessarily need a run back. But we'll get into this in a little bit. But Sam Howell has 2 games under 17 fantasy points. Every other game, he's had 17 or more fantasy points. And if you remove the 17, then every other game he has is 19 or more fantasy points. But he will get sacked 76 times.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's a good point. I mean, you could run Sam Howell out there with one dude and then put like 4 Cowboys. And shit, I know this sounds crazy, but I wouldn't even mind like a Sam Howell, McLaurin, 2 or 3 Cowboys in there, and then one of them being the defense. I know that sounds crazy, but just like you said, the sacks are going to add up, and we know Sam Howell's going to throw the ball 40 times. So, but here's the problem. You're like, okay, well, he's going to throw the ball 40 times. Like somebody's got to catch those passes, absolutely. But there's like 6 dudes who can catch passes. Do we really know which one's going to go off? Am I going to really risk destroying all my Dallas Cowboy stacks by jamming in these scrubs? Because there's plenty of value to go around on this one. And look, Sam Howell's got 51 sacks this year. The record is 76. I know that recently maybe those numbers haven't been as crazy, but this is still one of the worst offensive lines when it comes to pass blocking in the league, maybe even historically in all of NFL history. All right, so we got this game. Obviously, there's not really a lot of injury news to talk about here, so we might skip over this a little bit, but let's move on to the next game where there are some injuries to talk about. This is the 49ers going into Seattle. Seattle's 6.5 point home dogs, and it's a 43 total. So this is the lowest total on the slate. We've seen the 49ers resurgence lately. We've seen Brock Purdy do a little bit better. There's a guy named Christian McCaffrey in this game that's going to be the highest owned dude on the slate. I don't think there's a way to avoid him going up against the Seattle run defense, who's been absolutely terrible. When it comes to Seattle's pass defense, though, man, they've looked pretty good. They've been able to kind of shut things down, and this feels like a total under game. It's going to be cold-ish, maybe low 40s, high 30s in this one, maybe a little bit of wind. This feels like this is a division rivalry, 20-24 type game, or even if this is a blowout where you think the 49ers can destroy Seattle, maybe Seattle only gets 10 points on the board. Where are you going with this one? Because we've got some injury news to talk about here. Geno looks like he's going to play, but Kenneth Walker's probably out of this one. So thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, man, like this is another interesting one. I think this gives you a just from a roster construction standpoint, gives you an interesting way to be unique. I don't know, like if many people are going to run Christian McCaffrey and Zach Charbonnet, for example, if Kenneth Walker's out. Even if Kenneth Walker's in, we've just seen an increase in what Zach's been doing on the field. So like I think that he's still a viable play, right? And you know how people are. They're not going to target 2 running backs from the same game. But I think that this might be a scenario where you can do that. Or to your point, if you want to come off chalky CMC, I think there's other pieces that you can take from that Niners offense. But look, it's the lowest total out of the 3 games. But man, I don't know. Like I've watched too many NFC West games. Like I I expect the Niners to win this game, but the Seahawks could do some dumbass shit. They could easily win this like 17-13. We've seen the Niners are vulnerable. What do they lose 3 in a row at one point to, some mediocre teams there. So, we I don't know, man. Like I think this might be the best Thanksgiving slate we've had in a very long time.
It's true. Like every game is good. We have good players on all these teams. One thing to think about here, dude, this feels like a game, of course, this is the last game of the slate, but it's the lowest total. This feels like a game where you could game stack the shit out of this game in your non-DAC type stacks, but still stack the shit out of this game and still get all the high total players from the earlier games with it being a 43 total, just in case if randomly this game goes off. But to me, Seattle... their defense, yes, while their defense is not good, their coverage has been pretty good lately. I don't know how much I love like a guy like Ayuk. I always love Ayuk, but I don't know how much I'm going to have of him in this game. A guy like Kittle is probably still a pretty damn good option. He's one of the best. He's one of the best raw point tight ends on the slate. You might not be able to avoid him, but an interesting defense here would be maybe Seattle. We've seen Purdy get flustered and throw some picks sometimes. Maybe this turns out to be, a couple sacks from Seattle and, maybe the 49ers score under 20 points and you're able to get a Seattle defense that's pretty cheap. Let's get into our injuries here because we got quite a bit to talk about here, man.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
Let's go back to this first game. So the Packers are screwed. Let's just say it as it is. We have the practice report from Tuesday. We were recording this on Wednesday around noon, so we won't have any of that Wednesday practice information, obviously, until later. Jump in that Discord. It's free. We'll obviously be talking about updates. Aaron Jones looks like he's going to be out. I don't think that they've officially ruled him out, but he's not going to play. Luke Musgrave, he's messed up, dude. I don't think Luke Musgrave is gonna play. Pretty significant is the term they're using there. That's not good. Okay, fine. Musgrave, he gets involved. Who's the backup? DeGuara is the backup. He's not playing either, probably. So now we've got some value to talk about here for the tight end spot, and at $2,500, it's going to be pretty easy to get to these guys. But Dontavian Wicks, he had a great week last week. He's on a concussion protocol. He was a DNP. I don't think he's playing. Emmanuel Wilson, the backup running back to AJ Dillon, he's probably out. Jaden Reed popped up with a chest injury with limited participation. He probably will play, but it's worth mentioning here. There's a lot of value that we're going to be able to find here from the Packers. What jumps out to you the most here, dude? Can we play A.J. Dillon, even though we know the dude sucks ass, and he gets 8 fantasy points a game without Aaron Jones? So I'm not going to fall for it again. I don't know. I don't think I will.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a good situation anyway. It's just Detroit's defense is a little bit better than I think we've seen. They're pretty decent against the run as well. So I don't like A.J. Dillon. He's not a guy I'm going to be targeting. I think the tight end punt is really what I'm looking at the most. Just no Luke, no DeGuara, means we're going to have some opportunity for a $2,500 tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this Detroit defense here. They're ranked, according to PFF, ranked number 2. And they're giving up only 3.8 yards per attempt. So with the matchup and knowing that A.J. Dillon is just not one of these guys that we're super interested in, the only counter argument to that is he's going to have to be on the field a lot, and he's going to have to be involved in the pass game. They just don't really have dudes. And we're going to talk about potential backup options. Maybe if you think that this is a blowout and you think you can get some PPR points from some of these backup running backs. So keep an eye on that stuff. Jaden Reed hopefully plays, because if Jaden Reed plays, I like him a lot at that price. Let's move on to the other game here. Rico Dowdle is really the guy to talk about here. Peyton Hendershot has been injured all year. He's been on the IR. Hendershot could come back, which could make things a little bit weird. We know that you like using all 3 tight ends. I don't think it really hurts Ferguson a ton. Like, Ferguson's clearly the guy, but maybe a Peyton Hendershot random touchdown could mess everything up for everybody. Just figured to mention that. Rico Dowdle, DMP, if he's out, do we like? Is there a Deuce Vaughn situation here? Does that help with the Pollard situation? We know Pollard got in the end zone finally. Is that going to allow him to break out? What jumps out to you, man? There's some injuries here with Antonio Gibson. He's got a toe injury that's been lingering. he was limited. It seems like he might play, but if he's out, I mean, we're going to have to consider getting Brian Robinson involved because he's been getting involved in the pass game. But think of it this way. If Antonio Gibson is active and we think he's going to play, you got to assume that he's going to get a little bit more run in this game just because they're going to be playing from behind most likely. So what are you thinking with these injuries here?
Yeah, man. Look, again, so this is an interesting game, right? I think we'll talk about this more when we get to it. I don't want to read too much into it when it comes to the injuries, and I really don't like planning for blowouts, especially in a division game on Thanksgiving. Dallas should kick the shit out of them, but I don't know if that necessarily opens up too much other opportunity. Rico Dowdle being out probably just means that Tony Pollard gets a little bit more guaranteed. I don't know if it necessarily opens up much run for the backups. But to your point, if we notice that Tony Pollard and Deuce Vaughn are the only two running backs active, then, I think you take a couple stabs on Deuce and a couple 150 maxes or something along those lines. Outside of that, man, like I don't even know if any of these other injuries matter. We just need to hope Washington can keep it competitive.
Look, I just have to keep emphasizing. I know we're talking about injuries here, but this Washington Commanders pass defense is historically bad. We saw that Chicago game where DJ Moore had a nuclear game, and as soon as I saw that, I'm like, dude, I have to target them every week, and they haven't really disappointed much this year when it comes to that. They traded away two of their best pass rushers. Their defensive numbers are probably a little bit better than they actually are than the team is right now. So this just feels like such an easy spot. And before I forget, Jalen Tolbert has now played more snaps than Michael Gallup for a third straight game in a row. So Tolbert is one of these value guys that you could throw into your DAC stacks that can make you a little bit different. Let's jump over to this last game here, Seattle. They've got a lot to talk. There's a lot of injuries to talk about here from these guys. Geno Smith limited with an elbow injury. It doesn't seem like it's a massive elbow injury. He should be able to play, but how effective is he going to be? If Drew Lock ends up getting into this game, or if for some reason we need to utilize late swap and Drew Lock is the guy, you might just jam in all the 49ers defenses possible if Drew Lock is the guy. But it seems like Geno's going to play. Kenneth Walker, to me, he's got a serious, quote, serious type oblique injury. I think he's out of this game. I don't even think it's a question. Maybe they haven't ruled him out for whatever reason, just to keep the other team on their toes. But this feels like a Zach Charbonnet game, and you got a guy like Kenny McIntosh, who's kind of a fan favorite dude who kind of runs like Kenneth Walker. You might see him get some extra run. And then DK Metcalf with a toe injury doesn't practice. I don't know how serious that is, but like if DK Metcalf was out, that's going to open up some crazy shit here for us. So what jumps out to you with these injuries, man? There's really nothing to talk about on the other side, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the way that I'm planning for this slate is just Geno Smith is in and then Kenneth Walker's out, right? Outside of that, I mean, obviously the Kenneth Walker news matters, but to your point, I really think it's a little bit serious. So I'm just really getting excited about Zach Charbonnet, man. Got a lot of exposure to him in best ball, so finally we're week 11, and I finally get to be excited about him playing
week 12.
So that's really the biggest one that I'm looking at, man. I'm just excited to see Charbonnet
already week 12, but
12, damn.
The hard part is, yes, Charbonnet is well priced. He's going to get involved if Kenneth Walker is out, obviously, and shit. Even if Kenneth Walker's in with that injury, you still have to assume that a guy like Charbonnet gets a lot of run. But guess who he's going against? He's going against the 49ers defense. So to me, people might get a little too excited about these value guys like A.J. Dillon and Charbonnet, when I don't think you need to massively jam them in. If these guys' ownership are high, I think they're absolute fade candidates for GPPs and bigger tournaments, and then maybe you throw one of them in your, more specifically, a guy like Charbonnet into your single entry if you're fading them in tournaments. All right, so let's get into this breakdown. We're going to go position by position. Break it down. So Dak, 6,800. Obviously, we know he's going to be the highest owned quarterback. What goes into this is how high owned, though. I mean, if he's under 30%, I still feel like that's too low. When we're talking about Dak, I crunched out using SaberSim. Basically what you do is you create a pool of 5,000 lineups, right? And then you sort and you do your contest sims and everything, and then you still find your top leveraged, your top lineups for those particular contests that you're entering. You'd think like on a slate where a quarterback's super chalky, maybe you get a little bit less of them because, how do you get different? Especially on a slate like this. Still, Dak's coming up in basically 80 to 90% of my builds after the contest sim sort. I just feel like the numbers are backing up. We know, yes, Dak can be inconsistent, but dude, this Washington defense is so damn bad when it comes to pass protection or stopping the pass. I don't think we can overthink this. He's 6,800. You're going to want to pair him with CeeDee Lamb, obviously, but there's so much value on this slate that's pretty decent. I think we don't have to worry about it. Like Jared Goff, 6,300. He got shut down last week against the Bears. They still ended up winning that game. Going up against Green Bay, not the toughest matchup ever. You probably want to get some stacks of him. Brock Purdy, 6,100. We did talk about how Seattle's pass defense has been better this year, especially as of late. He's 6,100. You're probably going to want to get some stacks with him. Maybe you get a little Brock Purdy, Kittle, McCaffrey action, and then run it back with a bunch of different Cowboys, like naked guys. Sam Howell, 6,200. Jordan Love, 5,500. Geno Smith, 56. Where are you going here, dude? Besides Dak, which is the obvious play, obviously, first off, do you feel the same that you're going to have a ton of Dak? And if not, who are you going with?
Yeah, man. I'll probably have a decent amount of Dak. I think maybe 40% is probably reasonable there. But no, I'm going to sprinkle in some Jared Goff, Purdy, and then even Sam Howell. Sam Howell is just interesting to me just because he's going to be low projected ownership, right? He's similarly projected, and he costs more than Purdy. So I think people will kind of just flock to Purdy, right? At a certain point, we got to play guys that we think on a 3-game slate that are going to be low owned. And I think Sam Howell is definitely viable in a situation like that. I think you can get to Jordan Love. Man, my analysis here isn't all that hopeful. Look, we got 6 quarterbacks, and they're all capable. They all have talented wide receivers. They all have pretty good offenses, but look, man, I think it's Dak, Jared, and then outside of that, probably Sam or Brock Purdy.
Yeah, we don't really have that quarterback that we've seen on some of these past Thanksgiving slates like David Blau or one of these random teams that ends up with a backup. We have all starting NFL quarterbacks here, which is kind of nice. Say what you want about Sam Howell. He's going to throw the ball 40 times. I just don't know that I love getting to a ton of him at Dallas against that defense. I don't know that I'm going to waste my lineups. I'd rather go with Goff. I'd rather go with Purdy and maybe even sprinkle a Geno Smith or two. But if I had to rank them, obviously you got Prescott, Goff. I'd probably go Purdy above Goff in my opinion, but that's up for debate. But I'm probably not going to get to much Geno because of that injury and going up against San Francisco. And I'm not going to get to a ton of Sam Howell. Now, Jordan Love on the other side of it, probably an interesting play at 5,500 with low ownership. Probably worth getting to some of him just in case he goes off. Let's go to running backs here. I'm sorting by salary. So obviously Christian McCaffrey is almost $2,000 more expensive than any other running back. I still don't think you overthink it. He's going up against Seattle defense. They're going to give up a ton of yards to him. He's going to get involved in the air. We know he's probably going to score a touchdown. His streak broke at 18 or 19 games where he didn't score a touchdown. He's going to score again. We know that. And he's expensive as hell. So pairing him with Dak and CD and trying to get good builds after that, you'd think would be hard, but it's not. I like putting him in the flex, maybe running a 3 running back build potentially, seeing as he's the late game and you have a little bit of flexibility there when it comes to late swapping. We can't get away from Christian McCaffrey on this game. I just don't think there's any reason to. I don't know. What do you think about it? He's going to be 52% owned.
Yeah, man. Play Christian McCaffrey when he's under 9K. I know it's probably slate specific, but 8,700 is too juicy of a price for Christian McCaffrey.
Jahmyr Gibbs, 6,800. Tony Pollard, 67. Montgomery, 63. So what I was mentioning earlier with this Detroit matchup with the running backs versus this abysmal Green Bay run defense, Jahmyr Gibbs is slated to be around 36% owned right now. David Montgomery at 15%. I know that Gibbs gets involved in the pass games and he has super home run ability, but you're telling me that David Montgomery doesn't? And you're talking about a guy who probably will get at least half the goal line opportunities in David Montgomery. He's 6,300 and he's 15% owned opposed to 36% owned. What are your thoughts on the what's your exposure going to be compared to Gibbs compared to Montgomery? And I think you could play both these dudes together. What do you think?
Yeah, man. I think handcuffing them in the same lineup's kind of interesting. As you pointed out, we're gonna have some salary saver options here. So I think we'll have the ability to do weird things like that. And again, on a 3-gamer, I think things like that aren't necessarily out of the question. That said, look, man, Jahmyr Gibbs has just been on a tear lately. We know that he has extreme upside when it comes to the pass game. So I don't know that his ownership really scares me all that much. Like, if we think that he's going to put up 20 fantasy points, then it doesn't matter if he's 95% owned. He might be one of the best plays on the slate. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Look, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. And I love David Montgomery. It might come down to, unless like there's just, for whatever reason, I want to pay up for all the stud wide receivers, I might come down to like having most of my lineups having at least one of those guys in them.
Oh, I think so. I absolutely think so. We can't forget about the pass game, though. We'll get to them here in a minute. You got some studs. You got Jamison Williams. We'll talk about here in a second. Tony Pollard, 6,700, dude. Can we really trust him? Like, I think one way to get different, I don't know if it's a great way, but just put Tony Pollard in your Dallas stacks, and maybe you're now accounting for every piece of offense they have. If you got Dak, CD, and Tony Pollard. But can he get there? He's 6,700. He's projected for 18 fantasy points. It's a good matchup. How often are we going to see him hit 18 fantasy points? That seems like more of a ceiling output for him based on his year this year. Where are you going with Tony Pollard? He's going to be supposedly going to be 45% owned. Is that just dudes seeing his score last week, just clicking with their thumbs on their phone?
Look, man, if there's a week for this offense to get it back on track, this is probably it. With Tony Pollard, right? The Washington Commanders traded away pretty much their entire defensive line. So I don't know if there's something that we're going to give them a little bit of credence for. I think that's the one to do it. But again, like for $100 more, I can get a dude that's 10% less owned. And then for $400 less, I can get a guy who's 30% less owned. So it's tough, right? I think you can get some exposure to Tony Pollard, but it needs to be in a unique type of build. Like 45% owned for him is just probably a little too much.
That feels too much. If that is really where he's coming in, I might be under the field with him significantly. I thought it would be much lower considering all these pay up options that you have at running back. He might be the odd man guy out. That was my thought. Let's go to this next tier down here. Obviously, Aaron Jones is doubtful. He's not going to play, in my opinion. Kenneth Walker's probably not going to play. And even if he is active, I don't know how interested I am in playing him at 6,200. But Brian Robinson Jr., 5,900. A.J. Dillon, Zach Charbonnet. These are, if you had to give me one, I'm taking Brian Robinson, even in a bad matchup. A.J. Dillon at 5,400. He's banged up too. He ended up on the injury report as well. So how we're going to need the dude to catch some balls in the backfield. We just haven't seen A.J. Dillon do well with Aaron Jones out. I'm not interested in falling for that trap again. Zach Charbonnet, 5,300. To me, at all three of these guys, Brian Robinson is the best option, especially if Antonio Gibson's out. If Antonio Gibson's out, you got to bump up Brian Robinson because he's been getting involved in the pass game, and I think he's going to obviously continue to get involved in the pass game with Gibson out. Sorry, I'm brain fart there. So thoughts, Ellie, here. This next tier here of guys is Robinson, Dillon, Charbonnet. I feel like you could fade Charbonnet or Dillon if you really wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the top end running backs are the guys you want to prioritize. Dillon just sucks, and Charbonnet's got a tough matchup. Charbonnet is a guy that I think we got to keep an eye on, though, just because with Kenneth Walker out and just the increase in usage that we've seen over him, I think you had 3, 4, and then all of a sudden he's up to 8, 10, 12 fantasy points over the past few weeks. So there is some true upside to Zach Charbonnet, but they're playing San Francisco, which is an elite defense. So at 30% ownership, I do think it is okay to come under the field on him a little bit. To your point, I like Brian Robinson Jr. The only thing that's going to negatively impact him is that he's been there. He's expected to be playing down 20 points pretty much the whole game. But yeah. he's their running back. He's a good running back, and he has the ability to get involved in the pass game. They just haven't done it. So, yeah, man, I like him. I think he's fine. Again, like this whole range, I don't know if you need to get to. Like, if you can comfortably punt at tight end with probably a starting min-salary price, and then play the 6,100 running backs.
Yeah, exactly. If, like I said, if Antonio Gibson is out, that I will go out of my way to get more Brian Robinson, because the game script doesn't eliminate him from being on the field as much as it would with Antonio Gibson in. He's 4,500. Antonio Gibson is. I am kind of interested if he's active. Emmanuel Wilson, who's on paper the backup running back for Green Bay, he's probably not going to play. So, we gotta. Does that help more A.J. Dillon? I don't know. We're gonna have to figure out who's actually the true backup if he's out, if Emmanuel Wilson's out. Deuce Vaughn's 4K, McIntosh 4K. He could see some more work. We don't know. He's a big question mark. Besides that, I'm not going any lower. Probably. Maybe I'd consider Deuce Vaughn if we've got some injuries there to talk about. If Dowdle's out, who are you going here low end wise? I don't think you really need to get super low here. I'm not really interested in anybody below Antonio Gibson, and I'm barely interested in him.
So this is just a drastic oversimplification of it, but just scroll down, right? Like the only guys that I'd be considering are the ones at 4K, and I think that means Vaughn at most, right? Outside of that, like there's limited upside from any of this. I can spend $1,500 less to punt at tight end and literally add $1,500 here, go up to $5,500, and you unlock AJ Dillon, Zach Charbonnet, and Brian Robinson again, pretty much, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, unfortunately, there's just no reason to be playing anybody under 4,500 at running back.
I think a minimum of one Detroit running back. That's how I'm rolling, and I'm trying to get Christian McCaffrey over the field, and then mixing in some value here in this second tier. Wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, 8,700. Look, he's on paper the best play on the slate. Is there a path where maybe he just gets like 12 fantasy points or something? Yeah, of course. Maybe some of these other guys go off from Dallas wide receivers. I don't think there's any reason to overthink this. I know he's expensive. He's 8,700, but look at it. He's getting projected 24 fantasy points. And he's only 40% owned. Only. I think he probably should be higher in my opinion. But the hard part is you're not going to be able to play guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown at 8,500, Brandon Ayuk 7K, DK Metcalf's a little banged up with a toe injury, probably will play 6,500, Tyler Lockett 6K. Let's start with that range here. How much CeeDee Lamb are you going to get to? If you're playing 100 lineups, are you as interested as I am? Because I probably will have him in almost every lineup. I got to take stands on slates like this. And I think he's a very easy stand to take. What do you think?
Yeah, play CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he's still not priced correctly. Again, like if this was a full slate, him, McCaffrey, they'd be over $9,500. So look, play CeeDee Lamb. He's going to crush. He's going to get 15 targets, 2 touchdowns. I got him in season long, man. He's just been busting everybody's ass, especially over the past couple of weeks. Dude's been on fucking fire. Yeah,
I mean, we can't forget about Amon-Ra St. Brown, though. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown with our Dallas stacks and our Christian McCaffrey. So maybe it's a Christian McCaffrey or Amon-Ra. I don't know. That's a bad decision to make, but we'll have to figure that out when we start building and see how we can work him in. Brandon Ayuk, though, dude, look, Seattle's defense, this isn't the most incredible defense in the world, but they've looked better coverage-wise. How much does that affect your thoughts on Ayuk here? We know he's going to get targeted. We know he's the number one wide receiver on this team, but he's 7K. Like, I feel like he's one of these situations where maybe I only get to a good amount of him when I'm doing my game stacks for that game. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily. I mean, at 7K, like I don't think that he's too high priced. He's not that low, but he's going to fit into a lot of lineups decently. I think people are going to kind of sleep on him a little bit. I mean, under 20% seems kind of egregious considering everybody else is 25% or higher owned, right? How many 2 touchdown games does Brandon Ayuk have this season? Like 3 or 4 or so. If there's a guy that has slate breaking potential, we know Brandon Ayuk can go out there and get 150 yards, 8 receptions, 2-3 touchdowns. He's literally done it this season. So, he's a guy that I want to have a decent amount of exposure to. I'll probably be 15 to 25% on him. I understand that the Seattle secondary is good. That's what Pete Carroll specializes in, is coaching a secondary. But there's also Deebo Samuel. You also got George Kittle. You got Christian McCaffrey. At a certain point, right, like Brandon Ayuk is just not going to be able to be guarded 100% of the time.
So Debo's 59, dude. Like we can't forget about him. He's actually slated to be higher owned than Brandon Ayuk, probably because that savings you're getting on him. But Debo's the kind of guy, he hasn't had nearly as good of a season as he did a few years ago when he was absolutely top of the world. But he's always a guy you have to fear when it comes to big plays and yards after the catch. And he probably gets involved in some of the run game as well. 5,900, he's going to be about 25% owned. Don't forget about Deebo Samuel. Terry McLaurin, this is the next kind of range here I want to talk about here. So I love Scary Terry. Of course I do. Tough matchup. I think when my initial runs, when I was doing my sims and I was trying to get 150 lineups and figure out kind of where the field would be in these bigger contests, I saw a ton of Terry McLaurin. He's going to be 30% owned. And I was seeing him because I was getting him as a run back to my Dallas stacks. Like I said in the opener, dude, I don't know that you have to do that. Romeo Dobbs is 5K. Jahan Dotson 4,600. Brandon Cooks is in a good spot, dude. He's 4,500. We know he's got big playability. He's started to come on lately, which has been nice. Let's talk about this range of wide receivers here. Feels like to me, I'd rather play Brandon Cooks any day of the week over Terry McLaurin in a bad matchup. Even though I love Scary Terry, we know he can crush.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, Scary Terry's 5,400. The one thing to consider is the wide receiver one, but again, we're getting into that range. $500 left for. I guess the wide receiver is a different minimum when it comes to mid-price guys. But Brandon Cooks at 4,500, and I know Gallup is just an absolute punt at 3,700. But like, there's still better plays, I think, just in that price range. Dak Prescott's projected for almost 25 fantasy points. So it's got to go to one of these wide receivers. And we know CD's going to get his, but Brandon Cooks, he's starting to get involved in that offense, man. If he gets cooking too at 4,500, I'm actually kind of surprised he's only 15% owned. I would have expected him to be closer to 25% after last week or the week before.
Yeah.
I would expect a little more recency bias with that projection.
So Jaden Reed, dude, if he plays, he did pop up on the injury report. He was limited in practice. He should play. But dude, if Jaden Reed is active, man, we've seen him get heavily involved. They don't have a backup running back. They don't have an Aaron Jones type for a game like this where they really need a dude who can catch the ball to the backfield or get some jet sweeps. And Jaden Reed is that guy. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to be moving around. They're going to find ways to get him open, help out the quarterback. I really like him in this game if he's active at 4,200. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, will be a popular dude at 4,100 as a run back to some of these 49ers stacks. To me, Gallup is almost a complete fade. He's coming in around 3% owned. Everybody else is just as smart to not play a lot of him. He's getting taken over. Like, I think that you don't want to play him at that price. I think Jalen Tolbert at 3,100 with your Dallas stacks is a very interesting guy to have. Curtis Samuel got ejected last week. He's 3,600. You always got to consider him. But a guy like Jamison Williams, dude, 3,400, finally getting involved. The numbers are there. He got a touchdown last week. Dude, Jamison Williams, man, he's one of these big play guys that can absolutely crush a slate with a big play. We saw it last year briefly, I think, on a play that was called back. We know what he can do. You're a big fan of Jamison Williams. I know you are. So I don't have to worry about you liking him, right?
No, man. Again, like 3,400. The only other place that it's cheaper to punt is tight end, right? 2,500. Getting a 3,400 guy who has a game-changing upside and can have a 60-yard touchdown is pretty interesting to me, especially if he's projected to be less than 10% owned, right? Like, we need guys like this that we're going to be willing to take stabs on, this is a good opportunity to do it. Detroit against Green Bay, a defense that really, I don't know. I mean, Green Bay is just kind of in shambles at this point, right? They're all over the place. Sometimes their offense is good, and then they're just getting fucked up. I don't know. But this is a good opportunity for Jamison Williams. I think we saw it might have been last week where he had a long touchdown in that comeback win. So Yeah, man. I like Jameson Williams. Josh Reynolds is viable. Curtis Samuel at 3,600 is kind of an interesting play as well. 15%. I know the people are going to be on him. I wish people weren't on him because I'd love to see him closer to 6 or 7, 8%.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's your guy.
Yeah, I'll play some Curtis Samuel. If like I said, like maybe I'd rather just pay down as my run back here for my Dallas stacks. Dontavian Wicks, we mentioned he's questionable. If he plays, like, great, I'm going to play him at 3,300. I don't think he plays, though, which opens up a little bit of action for Malik Heath. He's been getting involved. I think that he's the guy that might get the reps there. We'll have to see. Malik Heath, 3K, bare minimum. So there's dudes we could play when it comes to wide receiver here and cheap guys. Even a guy like Kevontae Turpin at 3K, I don't know that, you have to prioritize getting Turpin in the defense there, that nice little stack. I don't think that's necessary. But Turpin is an interesting guy. That we got to find interesting cheap, like low-owned dudes that can go along with our Dallas stacks. Anybody else to talk about here? Donovan Peoples-Jones wasn't active last week, I believe. So we'll have to keep an eye on if he's active. Maybe they try to get him involved. They went out and traded for him. So keep an eye on that. Anybody else to talk about here on the low end?
No, I don't think so. I mean, really the guy that I'm looking at the most, right, is Jameson Williams. And then we talked a little bit about Josh Reynolds. I think this range, like everybody is 5% or less owned. If you have a feeling one way or another, you can kind of just rotate some people. We saw De'Ami Brown get involved a little bit last week, but I think that's more just because Curtis Samuel got hurt. If you think that there's a potential that we see in any limited wide receiver action in Washington, De'Ami Brown's an interesting big upside guy.
So when it comes to value, dude, Jameson Williams is probably my favorite GPP type play. Josh Reynolds is obviously there. Jalen Tolbert, to me, 3,100 is a very good value play. We have to assume the trend is going to continue with Gallup getting less snaps. Maybe they want to see what Tolbert's got. They drafted this dude. And when it comes to top-end guys, we got to try to make sure we get Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like he's the guy that might slip through the cracks for me. Even though he's 36% owned, I feel like I might not get to as much of him, especially with my hand building, even though I know that's not good. By the way, for us best ball bros, Dallas with a great matchup and Detroit, we got our little week 17 stacks going here. Maybe we can get a little push on some of our best ball lineups that aren't quite cashing yet. All right, tight ends. George Kittle's 6K. He's going to be 12% owned, dude. He's 6K. We know what George Kittle is capable of. He's going to give us some bad games where we don't see much out of him. But, dude, he's got 25-point upside. And with a guy at 6K that's not going to be very popular, if he puts up 25 points, I don't see any of these other tight ends being able to reach that raw point amount. They might be better value if you look at their price. But, dude, you can't forget about Kittle here, man. I really I need to emphasize that. And I think that going over the field might make you a little bit more unique. You might end up with more two tight end lineups with the guy in the flex. Thoughts on Kittle here, and we'll talk about the rest of these guys in a minute.
Yeah, man, I like George Kittle. Again, this is a very good offense in San Francisco, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, right? Just the same logic applies to Kittle like it would IU. There's so many weapons on this team, and the secondary is good enough that those corners are a little bit more glued to the wide receivers. It could really open up some opportunities for Kittle to kind of split some of the zone coverage that Pete Carroll likes to run with his corners and his safeties, right? So look, at 6K, like I think he's an interesting way to get unique, 12%. We know everybody's going to be punting tight end, especially if Luke Musgrave is actually out. And I mean, even right now, they've got him listed at 25% ownership, right? So it's just something to keep in mind, man. Like if you're going to get low owned dudes at the top end of the spectrum, those are the guys that I want to take stabs on, right? I don't necessarily want to be trying to find low owned value that I think is going to hit. That's much more volatile. George Kittle, we know what he can do, right? We don't know if Noah Fant can go out and get 2 touchdowns. We know George Kittle can ruin a slate.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam Laporta, 5,200, hasn't been getting as involved recently since they've had both running backs healthy. You still got to consider a guy like that. Jake Ferguson, 3,900, good value. He's going to be the highest owned tight end. But, dude, we can get even better value on this slate. Logan Thomas is 3,500. Luke Musgrave, 3,300. I don't think he's playing. So it looks like we've got ourselves, where's he at? Tucker Kraft, 2,500 bare minimum. Looks like Tucker Kraft's going to be the guy. I think he's a big dude. He's a big target. I think he's like 250 pounds, like 6'5". Tucker Kraft, 2,500. This is a guy that might end up being popular because DeGuara is out as well, and you might see this dude as the starting guy. Like, this team is going to have to get their tight ends involved. They don't have healthy wide receivers. They don't have a healthy backfield. If Tucker Kraft is the guy, you can't avoid him at $2,500, dude, right? I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, like we've been talking about the $2,500 punt this whole time on the show. Look, and I think that's just assuming that DeGuara and Musgrave are out. But 2,500, man, like this is quite clearly the best value that we have to look forward to on Thanksgiving. Obviously, hop in the Discord. We'll update you guys if anything changes. This is the second game on the slate, so we'll be able to make some adjustments, and I think we'll have the ability to swap into some other options. But right now, like I just don't know how you come off of Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, this is the first game actually, so we should.
Yeah, then we're perfect.
So we should be able to set our entire builds based off of the value that we see coming out in this game for the Packers, which is kind of nice. So when it comes to flex, what is going to be your strategy with flex? I think you probably want to spread yourself out. I'm probably going to end up getting some running back with CMC. I'm probably going to end up getting a decent amount of wide receiver with some of these value guys. But I feel like tight end might be one of these ways where, yeah, it's gross. But because you're able to pair like a Kittle and a $2,500 tight end, maybe that makes it worth getting two tight ends on this slate. And I know a lot of people aren't going to do that, at least as of now, when you look at ownership. What are your thoughts on the double tight end build?
Yeah, man. I don't mind the double tight end build. It's been growing on me a little bit more recently. Generally, I don't like it, at least for main slates, but it's been hitting on main slates too. So now, I mean, on a 3-game slate where you're looking for a little bit of variance, you're trying to get it a little bit different. I think it's definitely viable. I guess my only advice is just make sure that flex is either somebody that you have enough salary to actually pivot to another play that you might like a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or, make sure it's the latest slate of the day.
Yeah, late swap is going to be heavily utilized for me, especially with SaberSim. SaberSim now has, with their contest sims, they have live contest sims. So they're updating based off of each quarter, they're updating the real life scoring from these players. So if you have a player that's maybe doing less good as he's projected to do, you can when you're doing your late swaps, you can use ownership, real life ownership in the contest you're in to pretty much adjust on the fly and be able to get some of your lineups that might be considered dead, start jamming in some of these higher owned or lower owned tournament type plays into your lineups. Let's go defense. So Cowboys at 3,800, they're clearly the best option on the slate. The 49ers defense at 3,600, especially if we think that Geno maybe doesn't play or is banged up, they're a great option. Then you get down to the Lions at 32, Packers 28, Seahawks 26, Commanders 25. I do feel like the Commanders defense might get jammed in a little bit more than they should just because they're the cheapest and we're trying to find as much of these studs in our lineups as possible. But Seahawks at 2,600 as a value play is kind of interesting. If Purdy just has a down day, they're in Seattle. Maybe the noise gets to him. Maybe he makes a couple mistakes. That's an option there. But I don't think you should overthink this too much. To me, Dallas Cowboys, 3,800 going against this pathetic Washington team. I think they can get 4 sacks at minimum, and maybe they hold them to under 20 points. You're going to see potential interceptions. The dude's going to throw the ball 40 times. You don't think he's going to throw a pick to the best secondary in the league, basically? Cowboys to me are the clear number one, and you could put the Cowboys. You can get 4 Cowboys, and then their defense. Thoughts on these defenses? I usually like to spread myself out for main slate. I don't think I'm doing it, man. I think I'm just going to jam these top end dudes in.
Yeah, man. I think you kind of just prioritize Cowboys, Lions. I don't know if I agree with that Commanders ownership at all, though. I understand punting $2,500, but
that's off.
I don't know, man. Yeah, like I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. Outside of that, man, like I think you stick to Cowboys Lions. The only other one that's a little bit interesting is 49ers Seahawks. Either one of those games being under 15% ownership on a 3-gamer is kind of interesting, especially with 49ers. They should probably be closer to 18 to 20%. So maybe going a little bit heavier on there, but spending $200 more to get Cowboys, who one player has 4 pick sixes. Like, I think that matters.
Yeah, exactly. And one team has historically the worst offensive line in history almost at this point of the year when it comes to giving up sacks. Let's look at value here. So let's switch over to our value tab up top. When it comes to value, we've already kind of gone over this, but if people are skipping around, it feels like when it comes to running backs, probably the top value guy is probably Zach Charbonnet. You could argue A.J. Dillon. I don't like A.J. Dillon, but probably a guy like Charbonnet. When it comes to actual like pay down value, probably if Antonio Gibson is active, he plays well into the game script. Anybody else? We talked about wide receiver value. Basically, what's your top value on the slate? Is it Kraft, the tight end at $2,500?
Yeah, I guess for maybe safer plays, it's probably Kraft. I think Jamison Williams is a very interesting one. And then guys like Brandon Cooks in that $4,500 range are also interesting. I don't know if running back is necessarily the spot that we're going to find much value unless just Charbonnet is probably the lowest that I'm willing to go there. And then, like you said, Gibson, if he plays, you have to play Antonio Gibson on a Thanksgiving slate. Like that's just that's a rule.
It's true. Tolbert is interesting. He's taken over that number 3 role, basically. There's a lot of value to talk about here. Jaden Reed, though, to me, if he plays, is one of my favorites as far as like raw point volume for a lower price guy. You probably get 10 points out of him at minimum. All right, let's go to our lineup builds here, dude. So let me jump over to Draftkings here. There we go. So hey, throw us a like, guys. We appreciate it. We appreciate the support. Subscribe. Let's get to 50 likes on this one. We do have a Black Friday showdown game that we're going to do a show on. We'll do that tonight. That's going to be for our members only, as well as the Monday night show. So if you guys want to join that, help support the channel, click join down below. It's only $3.99 a month. You get a Monday night game every single week, as well as a random extra bonus little slate here every now and then. All right, so Ellie, let's build like our single entry. Let's say we entered the $100 single entry with like 1,000 people. What are we doing here? Let's just jam Dak and CD in right off the bat. I don't think there's any reason to overthink that. Let's get to CMC. Well, let's talk about this first. Gibbs or Montgomery? We're gonna go. Oops. Siri just
I didn't
went
get
off.
that. Could you try again?
Hey Siri, shut up.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Bro, enough. All right, sorry. So Gibbs or Montgomery here. Thoughts?
Probably Gibbs. I mean, he's chalkier.
But do we have to? Let's talk about this though. In this cashy sort of build, the single entry, do we want to get a guy like Charbonnet in for a little bit of value at running back so we can afford to pay up for wide receivers here?
I would. Yeah, I would absolutely run Charbonnet. I mean, we're planning on getting Christian McCaffrey anyways, right?
Yeah. So let's do Charbonnet, Gibbs, and McCaffrey and see how. Oops, sorry about that. And see how screwed we are here. Let's put McCaffrey in the flex. So that's about 3,400 a pop. Let's just put Kraft in right off the bat. Where are you, Kraft? I'm gonna have to find him mixed in with all these other $2,500 scrubs. There he is. So next, wide receiver. We're gonna be limited here. Do you want to go down? We've already got Dak with CeeDee Lamb. Do you want to grab? And I know this is single entry, so we don't have to maybe worry about necessarily our crazy stacking like we would in GPP. But I think we're gonna want to get at least one more wide receiver with him here. Is this a Tolbert situation? Like, am I going too crazy here, or is this a Jamison Williams probably here, or both?
I mean, I might even just go Curtis Samuel. It's not that much savings, but he's the chalkiest out of the 3. But I think any of the 3 are fine.
Let's go Jamison Williams. I think I agree with the chalk comment, but I think that Williams is in a pretty good spot here. You could also go Tolbert as well, but now we're dealing with, we really don't have, we've got one stud wide receiver. This is a very heavy running back build. Let's grab first. Let's get our defense. Do you want to just go 49ers defense with McCaffrey here?
Yeah. Let's see what we have left over.
See what we have here. Wide receiver, Jaden Reed. Man, if he's active, that's not a bad guy to throw in the last spot there. But we see that we're getting a very, very heavy type running back build here. I don't know if I love this. We got Prescott, Charbonnet, Gibbs, Lamb, Jameson Williams, Jaden Reed, Kraft, the tight end spot with McCaffrey and 49ers. Let me pull out McCaffrey, 49ers. Let's go McCaffrey instead of Charbonnet here. And I want to open up this flex spot for us. I know that we're going to be limited on value for running back, but that's okay. Let's get another wide receiver in here potentially. All right, so Dak Prescott, do you want to do a run back with Curtis Samuel here, like you were saying?
Yeah, if we need another value, probably will.
So we've got a wide receiver, a flex spot, and a defense open with about 4,300 left. Let's pick our defense now. Let's just build with the Cowboys defense here and see what that does to us. So we're missing St. Brown. We're missing guys like Ayuk, Metcalf, Debo, Scary Terry. There's a lot of dudes we're leaving out because we want to go McCaffrey Gibbs, which makes it hard. We still got Kraft in here. Where do you want to go here for wide receiver? Is this another Jameson Williams situation? I don't know why, dude. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams or even Tolbert.
So look at this. You got A.J. Dillon here. We're building for a single entry here. So this could be a decent option for single entry because I think he's going to be 30% owned potentially. You got A.J. Dillon in the flex. Now I'd switch this out, obviously, put McCaffrey down there in the flex and put Dillon at the running back spot because we got the late start there. But this is kind of where my single entries will probably go. You could argue that Curtis Samuel is probably not a good pick there, maybe. But we got Prescott, Dillon, Gibbs, Lamb, Samuel, Jameson Williams, Tucker Kraft, McCaffrey, Cowboys defense. Let's build some GPP builds here, dude. So let's try to find unique Dak Prescott builds. So let's put Prescott in. And my first question to you is, how much are you playing Dak without CeeDee Lamb?
I don't want to get too lost in a tangent here. I think you should, for the most part, play just stack them both up. But they're two very well projected players. And then on Sunday, the Millie Maker had a naked Brock Purdy, right?
Yeah, of course.
And it makes sense because Brock Purdy was cheap as hell, projected for 30 fantasy points or whatever, and has an elite, a wide receiver core or whatever. It's too expensive to pay up for.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to be weird, like maybe. I think there's going to be a little bit of recency bias where we get a little bit more naked Dak this week just because of what we saw in the Millie for Sunday. But I think you can go naked Dak or even Dak, Tony Pollard, some shit like that so that you can go to St. Brown instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously want to get at least 2 pass catchers with Dak on a 3-game slate. Maybe, and I prefer more. I guess the biggest question is, do we have to play CeeDee Lamb with him? I don't think you have to. But I feel like, to me, he's one of these free square types. I know there's no such thing really as free square, but in NFL. But to me, I feel like I'm going to play a shitload of him. I'll probably have more CeeDee Lamb than I do Dak Prescott. So let's throw him in. And let's find ways to get different with a Prescott CeeDee Lamb build. Let's just go automatically down to Tolbert here, 3,100. So we got 2 guys here. Let's try to get one more, dude. Let's go ahead and put Ferguson in. I think a lot of people are going to be doing this, but that's okay. We got a little Tolbert action. And instead of a run back, I'm not going to do any run back here for Washington. We've covered, we have this game covered, and shit, you could probably even go Cowboys defense here. Like, this is not too extreme to me by any means. Now, at this point, let's try to get some correlated little 1v1, maybe some 2v2 stacks here, potentially. We're gonna want maybe maybe this isn't a Christian McCaffrey build. I don't know. Can we? What situations are you not playing Christian McCaffrey? It's probably going to be in these higher priced Dak stacks, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna be able to get to him here, but I mean, you want to try?
Let's just try. Let's plug him in. And now, where are we going here? Like, do we want to get some correlation? We want to still game stack here if we can. So do we want to grab a Seattle guy? Is this a Charbonnet situation like you were talking about? Like probably not a lot of people are going to do that. The negatively correlated running backs versus each other, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think we go Charbonnet, Jameson Williams, and then see what we have left to run it back, or if we even need to run it back.
6,300. That gets us.
Hate Montgomery.
I mean, Montgomery's not bad. Yeah, we did talk about that. We want to get one of those guys involved. You could leave a little bit of money on the table here. Where is Dobbs is 5K. You could. Where's he at? AJ Dillon. I wouldn't do that though. I'm not putting Charbonnet and Dillon together. This probably just works out to be a Montgomery in the flex situation. We'll switch that. We'll put Montgomery. Put CMC in the flex, Montgomery in the running back spot. So we got Prescott, Montgomery, Charbonnet, Lamb, Tolbert, Jameson Williams, Ferguson, McCaffrey, Cowboys defense. This feels like a very duped lineup to me. Even though you got Tolbert in there, this feels like it's super duped, right?
Yeah, man.
So let's get different. We got let's build another Dak lineup. Dak at quarterback. Do you want to do the double Gibbs Montgomery build here? Like, what do you want to do to get different with this particular Dak build?
Yeah, let's go with the Gibbs Montgomery build and at CD start from there.
What if we didn't play CD in this one? You want to try it?
I'm down.
Let's
play. Go what?
Cooks,
Ferguson.
Yeah, or something like that. Let's put Amon-Ra St. Brown in because we got to get exposure to this MF. Let's go Cooks. Could go Ferguson, or you could just go straight to Tolbert here, man. You think that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
But see, to me, I feel like I want to game stack more. You know what I mean? I get we got a Gibbs, Montgomery, St. Brown. That's an interesting little stack. I want to get more Dallas here. Maybe we can go Ferguson too. Prescott, Cooks, Tolbert, Ferguson. I like it.
Fuck it, throwing Pollard.
Pollard.
I don't even know if that'll be an acceptable lineup.
Lions defense. Hey, that's not bad actually. Prescott, but this is the kind of weird shit that I'm okay with for bigger. Like if you're entering this $20 Millie Maker, like the lineup I built previously is going to be duped. This one, not so much. You got 4 pass catchers for Dallas, along with and you got Pollard in there as well. And then you got 3 dudes from one team. If Detroit and Dallas absolutely crush and they blow out their teams, this could be the nuts here. I kind of like this. All right, let's build with another quarterback here before we send it off. Who do you want to build with? You want to go Purdy? You want to go Howell? We got to build with somebody else.
No, Purdy's fine.
All right, let's try this out. So Purdy, let's get CMC with him. Do you want to just... Because we got to remember, this is a lower total game. I don't know how, I don't know with the conditions, what weather's a little bit interesting. Do I think that the 49ers can put up 30 points like some of these other teams could? I don't think so. So maybe we only need to get Purdy, McCaffrey, and maybe we go Kittle here.
Yeah.
Now, do we want to run back in this one? Do we want to put in maybe Tyler Lockett and Charbonnet? Like, we probably want to get 5 players from this game if we're going to be going crazy stacking it. Or maybe we pull pieces and then we still game stack that Dallas game. What do you want to do?
I actually think an interesting way to do this one probably be Charbonnet and the Niners defense. I think that still all supports the kind of low total and concentrated offense.
Yeah. All right, now let's get a bunch of Dallas guys here. So let's get CeeDee Lamb. Do you want to do double tight end with Ferguson? Or do you want to get you want to get Brandon Cooks, or what do you think?
Yeah, let's try Brandon Cooks.
All right, Brandon Cooks. Now we got to get, I think we're going to end up in the flex. We're not going to be able to do it. Yeah, this is pretty. I was thinking we probably want to get to one of these one of these Detroit running backs. Let's not play Cooks. Let's just go all the way down to Tolbert. Let's see what that does for us. Can we get to Montgomery at least? Nope, we can't. So that's kind of interesting.
What happens if we put in the craft from
right in the flex right off the bat? Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, where are you at? Craft. Crafty. There he is at the top. Cool. 6K for the last spot as a wide receiver. Lockett. Charbonnet Lockett. Okay. I know we're going against the 49ers defense, so that's kind of interesting. You could go Debo here. You could just add to your stack. Let's just try that. Let's just try that. Debo's in there. Let's pull him out. Dotson, Cooks. So I don't think we don't need 3 pass catchers without the quarterback. You could go down to like Jaden Reed here potentially. You could also put in JSN or Lockett. It's kind of interesting. There's a lot of possibilities. I really do think that focusing on Dallas, that game, stacks with Dallas, game stacks, is probably the way to go, and then fill in the rest of your lineups with 1v1s, 2v2s. I don't know, man. What did you learn after building here, man? This seems like the pricing's very soft. It seems like very doable. Feels like a pretty easy hand building type of day. Even though I'll probably only hand build maybe my single entries. What'd you learn after this, man?
Yeah, man. I think that's an interesting point. It felt easy to hand build, so maybe it's going to get a lot more just casual players driving up the chalk on some of these known guys, right? Yeah. So just keep an eye out for stuff like that. If you have an optimizer, use it. But as always, hop in the Discord. We'll make sure that we're chopping it up prior to lock for each of the games, so that we can make sure that we're giving input on late swaps and stuff like that as well. So
yeah,
that's really going to be the most important. We'll build more lineups there and get feedback and whatnot. So other than that, man, like I'm just excited for a pretty decent Thanksgiving Day. It looks like we're actually going to have some offense this year.
Yeah, and remember also we have some great showdown slates here. We're not doing any shows for the showdown slates for this particular game. For this slate, but there's some good showdown slates out there as far as the contest sizes are still pretty decent, man. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you throw us a like on the way out, subscribe, join that Discord. That's free. And if you guys can support us, join the YouTube members. You'll get a couple shows a week. See you guys later.